I love to see how specific traits are passed down through generations. From physical attributes and general disposition to mannerisms and even skills, there is a thread that ties families together. My grandfather was a salesman who knew how to woo an audience and how to accept a firm no gracefully. I see these attributes in my own brother, but notice that some of these skills were omitted from my own genetic makeup. For me, knowing about what my ancestors did for a living has provided insights into how I became the person I am today. In this episode, we are going to look at how Ken's family made their way in the New World and how their history forged his own. Mr. Fiddler, I'm curious about what family you know that first immigrated to the United States and where they came and what they did when they arrived.
Well, maybe I can try to help. I know on my mother's side of the family were the Horners, and they came from Germany, from Deerbach. And Nicholas Horner arrived on the ship Osgood on 9/19/1750 with his family. Nicholas, son of Henry H. Interstate, lived in Exeter in 1790, had one son about 16 years, two under 16, and two daughters. They were John Horner, died 1825, in Tulpehocken Township, and Barbara had sons Harrison and Benville. George was guardian to brother and John's son Benville. Daniel died 1829. Susan and had 9 children who were George. Frederick died 1879 at Millersburg in western Berks County, leaving a widow Hannah and children Lorena, Sarah, Mary, Cassia, and Emma Susan. The following is information taken from a newspaper article written by James F. Walsh of the Reading Eagle newspaper around 1969. England was celebrating the coronation of a new king in 1760. That same year, some Pennsylvania Dutch masons were building a 2-story stone tavern in Exeter Township. The tavern naturally took the name of the new ruler, was called the King George III. The name lasted only 17 years. Then the proprietor, Johann Nicholas Horner, took down the sign around 1777 of the crowned red-coated king that was over the door. In its place went up a delightful-looking lion painted red. Horner renamed the tavern the Red Lion.
Wow.
Now, almost 235 years later, the Red Lion still stands along the Philadelphia Pike to Baumstown. It is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, building in continuous use in the county. Whitewash and paint have hidden much of the nation's red stone, and additions and alterations have altered the earlier outlines, but the original stone can still be seen in the north wall, and the additions and easily discernible. 50 years after established of the Red Line, the Perkiomen and Reading Turnpike was incorporated. The company built a road from the Perkiomen Creek at what is now Collegeville to Reading. There were many interesting stops for the travelers to and from Philadelphia in those days. The Red Line was the first stop after leaving the British Crown in the southeast corner of 5th and Washington. That place also got a new name during the Revolution. The owner was William Tillman, and he renamed his tavern the American Eagle. Later, the inn was operated by Daniel Oyster, the clockmaker. The stagecoach and turnpike made a great deal of difference in the trade of the Red Lion. Instead of being a neighborhood bar and a local patronage, it became a stop for regional travelers. Before the railroad and Schuylkill Canal were built, not only stagecoaches, but great wagons with merchandise and produce passed the Red Line. The wagons had hooped white covers over the bed. Usually they're painted it blue with red wheels. They were pulled by 4 and 6 horses with bells over their harness. This was the Conestoga wagon, went on to become the Prairie Schooner that conquered the Great Plains and the Rockies, and finally took pioneers over the high Sierras to dip wheels in the water of the Pacific, where it reached journey's end. Until arrival of the Model T Ford, no other vehicle had as much effect on the nation's economy. Some of the first Conestoga wagons were built along the creek by that name that rises in southern Berks County near Shiloh Church. In 1746, Johann Nicholas Horner bought an additional 206 acres from Daniel Cole for £200. These acres adjoined the present-day Daniel Boone homestead. 3 years later, Horner bought 77 acres of it for £278 from Peter Kirby of Exeter. In his will, dated July 25, 1810, Johann Nicholas left to his son, also named Nicholas, 140 acres of this tract. Daniel Horner, another son, operated the Red Line until 1815 for 35 years. Therefore, Thomas Ives was the owner in 1849. The tavern was sold to Thomas Bartow, who sold it in 1857 to Samuel Herman for $4,500. In 1863, Solomon Stoner became owner and his brother George landlord. In 1901, upon Solomon Stone's death, his brother, the Reverend Stoner, executor of the estate, sold 40 acres and the tavern to George B. Bortz for $3,600. Bortz owned it until recent times. During Prohibition, the tavern stayed open, selling 3.2 beer, but the Depression closed the bar for many years. The tavern also contained a post office and clothing store, and had a blacksmith shop and creamery located in the back, serving as stop for stagecoaches in the early years. Around the late 1800s, William B. Horner was a proprietor of the Red Line Inn. Catherine Yoder Horner, mother of Kenneth Horner Fiddler, lived there as a little girl and went to school nearby. Also, her brother, William Yoder Horner, ran the post office, clothing store, and creamery.
Wow, it really sounds like the inn had a vibrant history and underwent many changes, but withstood the test of time. And it's pretty fascinating that your mom grew up there as a little girl. I'm curious if your mom has any stories about what it was like to grow up there.
Starting to do my genealogy, and I ran across this in paper. And I knew that where the red line ended was because my mother used to talk to about it. And I went down to visit it, and they were open. They were still open as what they were. And they had a big bar there. And behind that, they had this big picture that I have of the red line in. That's where I took a picture of it.
And did your mom have memories of living there that she ever talked about?
Well, after I did that, I told her, and yeah, she talked about some, yeah. And her brother, Uncle Will, they went to church in that area, down near Obley. That's where most of them lived, around Obley.
So I'm curious a little bit about what other sort of trades were in the family, or what sort of traits were therefore passed on. I understand that there's an interesting story about cigars in your family.
Well, when I get back to my genealogy, and when I put fiddlers in the computer, one time it come up fiddler cigars, and I couldn't believe it. And then I was also going to the Topahawken settlement. I had a history place where I could go and look up everything. And when I went there, I looked up the fiddler cigar, and the guy that works there saw what I was doing. He said, "Come over here." And in another room, on the table, they had a bunch of different fiddler cigars.
Wow.
Yeah, how about that?
And did you ever smoke a cigar?
Yeah. And as I was growing up, my father always had a cigar in his hand. His hand almost looked like it was always holding a cigar.
It was fixed there. The hand and the cigar were one.
Yeah, and another thing we always have is a spittoon.
For the tobacco.
Yeah.
For the chew. For the chaw. Interesting. I'm also curious, I know that there's another family trait that was passed down from your father, and it's bookkeeping.
Yeah, he was a bookkeeper for a plumber, and a long time because of that, he always kept, him and his brother always kept journals. And one time he told me, I guess I asked him what he was doing. He said he was writing a journal. He said that's what you ought to learn to do. Always keep a journal. Of course, sometimes something comes up and somebody said they did this or you did this. And if you don't think so, you say, wait a minute, and you get out the journal and show it right there where it says that's what you did.
And, you know, I sit here and I have to laugh because, wow, you really are a mirror image of your father in that way. I can't tell you how many times we've had a disagreement about how something happened, and you always say, now wait a second, let me check my journal. And there, sure enough, you get down to the bottom of every mystery.
I did that a long time with my wife.
I'm sure that,
Of course, a lot of times we didn't agree on a lot of things. That's why I have the license plate. I told you. Are you recording all this?
Oh, yeah, we're live. We're live here, folks. Oh boy, yeah, you are one of a kind. Well, it's been really interesting to hear how much you are like these ancestors you had that you never met, but the traits just passed down through the DNA. It's really something special to.
Well, I tell you, for a long time I also smoked cigars until I retired, and they said if you quit smoking right now, your prices go down, and I quit smoking cigars.
And let that be a lesson to our listeners out there. How old were you when you quit smoking cigars? When you retired? So what?
65 years old.
So at 65 years old, you can quit and you can be smoke-free.
Just like that.
Smoke-free for 30 years. Anything is possible, folks. Well, we're just having a great time over here, and we are we're going to pick up next week with another installment of the origins of the Ping Jockey. And this time we're going to look a little bit more closely at his fiddler side, his paternal side, rather than the Harners, who we've been looking at, that are his maternal ancestors. So this has been a real pleasure, and we look forward to sharing more next week. This is Marley and the Ping Jockey signing off.
Bye-bye.